Sean, we've discussed possible destinations for Myles Garrett, and one that was brought up this week by a Lions star defender, Aidan Hutchinson, creates a lot of intrigue for a potential duo here. Aidan Hutchinson said on the Squeeze podcast, I don't know what the hell that is, just making up names of podcasts at this point.
That's
probably some random. I'm going to look that up in a second. Whose podcast
you
that
think
is?
they're called the Squeeze because they got the juice, like you would squeeze an orange? Oh,
If Aidan Hutchinson and Myles Garrett paired up, we would have one of the craziest pass rushing duos in NFL history, possibly. The quote from Hutchinson on the Squeeze podcast, we were just talking about what could be. The two of them were in communication with one another. And although it's probably unlikely, I would be thrilled to play next to him if it were to happen. Our whole D-line would be just totally elevated. That would be a scary D-line, and we would get along too. I've seen him these last few years at different things. He texted me after I got hurt, which I don't know. It was just a cool thing. God, these guys are awful at giving quotes. Like guys outside of your own team who reach out to you. So I think he's a good dude. If he does, great. But I don't know. We'll see. But the whole thing would be awesome. That's a really shit quote from Aidan Hutchinson. He brings up the point of like, it's unlikely. I think that for his case, he shouldn't necessarily be rooting for this because the contract that Myles Garrett's making would make it really freaking hard for the Lions to then pay you when it's your turn to get your second contract. And he would be in that ballpark of being one of the highest paid edge rushers, maybe even the highest paid edge rusher at the time. So there's the little bit of messiness there. But the concept of finding Aidan Hutchinson a rushing mate and it being the best pass rusher in the NFL, I'm all for it. I think the Lions need to make a move to make this thing happen. Send your first-round pick at the end of the first round. Send your future first-round pick. Whatever else you need to do to make this happen. If I'm the Lions, I'm going heavy after this thing now that we're starting to just hear that Aidan Hutchinson has thought about it and they texted about it.
Yeah, the Lions are so loaded that they could dispose a couple first-round picks and still be okay for the future. So much young talent, so many guys that they're going to have to pay, obviously. And pairing Hutchinson with an elite defensive end, I think it would cure a lot of their woes for the upcoming season, the expected woes of new OC, new DC. Loading with a bunch of talent helps. And if it's not Myles Garrett, it could also be rumored Joey Bosa to get released by the Chargers, which would be a very interesting defensive end combination in Detroit between Aidan Hutchinson.
Unlike one we haven't seen in a very long time.
And Joey Bosa. They would inflict some punishment on some quarterbacks. I think Garrett would as well. It should be top priority. They got the offensive line locked down. They got the wide receiver options locked down. Two great running backs. You could even, if necessary, let one of them walk and still be okay. Brian Branch shoring up the defensive backfield. Linebacker, you got that maniac Anzalone. And then Martinez, who has been very, very solid. They get gashed in the run because they don't have that. They didn't have healthy defensive tackles this year, but they have good, strong defensive tackles. The only key, the last piece they need is an edge rusher opposite of Hutchinson. Get Garrett and or Bosa, and you're absolutely cooking in Detroit and should be the NFC favorites, even over Philly.
I really like this idea, though. I really don't want to see Myles Garrett end up on a team where it's like, hey, here's a nice little boost to the squad. I want to look at the teams that were in the conference championship games. I want to see him with the Commanders. I want to see him on the Lions or like within range of the conference championship games. I want to see him. Maybe the Bills are probably unlikely. But I'm trying to think of like some of the AFC teams probably are the least likely to go after him.
You wouldn't enjoy him in Arizona. Yeah,
that would be really funny if he just has like the JJ Watt track where he just kind of gets shipped off to a really. That'd be so lame if that's how his career pans out.
They're paying me $100 million to go sit in the desert and get sacks.
What a dick thing to do by Cleveland if they sent him to Arizona.
Oh.
Hey, buddy, you want to win a Super Bowl? Hey, go try in Arizona.
Yeah, you want to really contribute on the defense and watch a crazy ass quarterback kind of keep you in games and then lose it right at the end. Go to Arizona.
It's definitely better than whatever he would have in Cleveland.
Yes,
they're also. We could consider, you brought up the possibility of, or the likelihood that Joey Bosa ends up being out with the Chargers. Joey Bosa, maybe he does end up with the Lions, as you suggested. Maybe the Chargers are a team to consider that could trade for Myles Garrett and that be the premier rusher that they have. I don't know what they would do with Khalil Mack, who's kind of at the end of his career.
If Bosa's not a Harbaugh guy, do you think Myles Garrett's a Harbaugh guy? I think if they're giving him the chop and Harbaugh's not sitting here saying, oh, we need to keep this man, I think that they have to start finding out who they're going to directly start paying the big bucks to. Letting that guy walk, a little odd.
I still think my favorite pitch for a location that doesn't sound sexy at the current moment is him going to the Patriots. Because like right now, year one under Vrabel and him going there, if he got traded this offseason there, it's not really they're not gonna win a Super Bowl. They might get into the playoffs if things go like really, really well. But year two, talk about coach vibe and player perfect situation.
You might be cooking a little bit here.
Seriously, we're talking about Vrabel as a head coach getting a mean-ass, physical, tough edge rusher in Myles Garrett to lead that defense. Come on now. Drake May on the other side. You've got some underrated dudes on that roster overall. They have a ton of money to spend this year and could commit money towards him. They could spend some money in free agency. You go get Trey Smith. I don't know, dude. I think I just created something here.
I think the rumblings are Trey Smith to Chicago.
Bringing Cooper Kupp.
Oh, I mean, yeah. That's a lot to break down of a possible Patriots.
I just fixed the Patriots.
God, yeah. Him and Keon White would be absolutely dynamic.
That's a crazy just like, hey, here's this really nothing guy. Yeah, him and this really just bland.
What, you're out on Keon White?
He's fine. He's just
good.
really thick.
Keon
That's
White's
it.
good.
No, he's okay.
Yes, he is. Oh, no.
He's a really thick dude. That's it.
Keon White would be, he wouldn't be unlocked. But I think that if he wasn't the number one, unlocking Keon White is not
bro. It must be nice and easy for any pass rusher for him to get unlocked because he's playing opposite of Myles Garrett.
It would help.
I'm sure he'd have a couple more sacks, but I don't think that there's some unexpected career arc here for Keon White.
These defensive ends,
it's just a weird dude that you're latching onto.
They got it. It's the right system and it's the right players next to them. There's no reason in the universe. The stars couldn't align in my mind for me to see Dante Fowler have a 10-plus sack season on Washington this year, this late in his career. Weird stuff happens at the defensive end position. Yet Dorrance Armstrong, opposite of him, almost getting 10 sacks as well. What? It's possible.
Sean Anderson put it on a quote graphic. Keon White, future defensive player of the year.
Keon White, big season inbound, all-pro season inbound. You keep your eyes
out, like people. One of those PFF graphics.
Oh, yeah.
I think that Keon White could possibly have a really nice season this upcoming year if a number of variables happen to play in his favor.
It has to be very vague. It can't have a true pointer take in it in the graphic.
Shout out Notre Dame analytics genius Anthony Trache, who used to be the king of that. He used to have so many of those graphics. Tyreek Hill is quite possibly maybe one of the fastest receivers that may or may not have played in the NFL. That was a banger. He used to have a ton of those.
An argument could be made about Patrick Mahomes possibly entering the conversation of top 50 all time. I'm almost ready to have that possible conversation eventually in the hypothetical scenario.
By the way, I looked up the Squeeze podcast. It's hosted by Taylor Lautner and his wife, Taylor Lautner. So it's Taylor Lautner and Taylor Lautner hosting, which I didn't know that his wife's name was Taylor Lautner. The tagline for the show, when life gives you lemons, what do you do with them? And then the next sentence is over here at the Squeeze. So there's no squeezing reference, but you nailed it. You completely nailed it. And we couldn't have more perfectly like that.
What is Taylor Lautner doing
like a mad
talking
lib.
to Aidan Hutchinson?
That almost could be right. I think he was just there at the Super Bowl or something and was interviewing him. It's a health and fitness podcast, but it plays into the whole joke of, hey, if you could just put two random people together, I bet we could probably guess what their podcast is about and what the name of the podcast is.
Who is that? Is that Amazon owned? It sounds so.
I think it was Wondery, which is Amazon.
I swear to God, I made a joke earlier.
I'd love to know what the listenership of that is.
About the Netflix overlords. The Amazon podcast overlords.
They've got so much bread and it's just going to nothing.
I'm so ready to be a strong soldier and absolutely become radicalized in the propaganda machine for them. But right now, looking out, being on the outside looking in, it's insidious what they're doing. They're dumping so much money into people that you may have heard of 10 years ago. That's crazy. It's Taylor Lautner and Taylor Lautner.
I find it...
I love hearing husbands and their wives talking on a podcast. That rules.
I do find it very funny that this is the world that we now live in.